we are recording.
Welcome. We will be starting in just a few minutes. I see we have 2 attendees so far. Thanks for coming a little bit early. We'll start in a little bit. Yes, so all of the attendees are muted. This is instead of like a meeting type of a webinar or a meeting type of Zoom, this is a webinar Zoom where the only people that can, everybody can hear are the people on the panel when we unmute ourselves. And so if you have something to say, do just like you did and you put it in the chat. And then we can see what you say for the chat. No problem. Thanks, Tracy. Welcome everybody to the National Parent Union's Boot Camp. Tonight we're going to be talking about public speaking and how to speak persuasively. We have an amazing lady who will be teaching us from the heart today. It is Christina Laster. She's a proud mother of 4 excited She's the proud mother of 4. She's the excited grandmother of 3. She is a San Diego, California native who is concerned about the well-being of children and families. She first started working in early childhood education while attending the University of San Diego for pre-law. She developed a deeper concern about how the systems impact disparate communities. Ending her work in the school district with special education, and upon graduating with a BA in political science, she decided to further her education, going on to earn a master's in business administration. Pursuing what is right and just for children, she has served as a civil rights activist in education. One fond memory that Christina has from early elementary school is winning a California statewide essay and speech contest and having the opportunity to spend a weekend as a VIP guest at the Room and H Fleet Science Center. Her zealous pursuit is to ensure that children have access and opportunity to quality education and great experiences. Dedicated to that end, she currently serves as our National Parents Union Director of Policy and Legislation. And we're going to go to our next slide.
So I'm going to go ahead and read that. The National Parents Union develops a narrative that is inclusive of families from a wide variety of perspectives and that unites parents of colors, low-income parents, special needs parents, single mothers and fathers, grandparents, formerly incarcerated parents, and parents in recovery, with traditional represented parent voices to join a vibrant coalition that disrupts the traditional role of a parent voice in policy spaces that directly impact our children. And our mission and vision is that the mission of the NPU is to support parents who have lived experiences. I'm going to bold and highlight lived experiences and are authentic voices, advocates, and organizers who engage, educate, and empower families, neighborhood by neighborhood across the United States. Parents trust and expect that education is a great equalizer, and school systems of every type must be held accountable for meeting the promise of education for all students, that each student has equitable access to opportunity to launch into a successful future.
Maritza, you're muted.
NPU Beliefs, we believe our children should always be at the core of our agenda in every decision. We believe there should be liberation, justice, and equity in education for all children. We believe education systems must be transformed to eradicate generational institutions of oppression. We believe families have a powerful voice that should influence educational and political policies and practices at the local, state, and national level. We believe in order to effect change and strengthen families, we must provide them with the resources and opportunities to develop their talents and share best practices.
So as part of this, so we try to make things a little bit interactive, and it also helps us to know what you're learning and that you're kind of learning and understanding the content. We're going to play a Kahoot game twice during this session of learning. And so Kahoot, you can either find it on your phone on the App Store and just download Kahoot, or you can add a second tab to your computer and you can have Zoom on one tab and Kahoot on another tab, and I will walk you through when we get to that game. But preemptively, if you want to go ahead and download Kahoot so that then you can play along with us and we can enjoy the time together, then that would be great. And now Miss Christina is going to take it away and exude some of her wonderful knowledge for us.
Thank you so much, Shay, Maritza, and Judith. And so I'm so glad to be here with my wonderful teammates and delegates of the National Parents Union Council. Thank you for everyone who joined. This is going to be of our flow of time together tonight so that you can have an understanding of what we're going to be talking and what we're about and what we're going to be covering. So here you can see we already did the welcome and NPU review. We are now on our flow. So the expected outcome, I expect participants yourselves will understand the power of persuasion and how to use it ethically to inform decision-making processes. Also, I hope, and I think that you will, gain a broader ability to communicate effectively with reason, using reason, data, and storytelling. And so I wanted to just show you that so you'll know what to expect. Right here is our reflection point. And I'm just going to give you a minute to read that and just process and think about what that's saying. And so it says, and I'm going to read it to you as well. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who, and so that is a quote from Nelson Mandela. And we're so grateful to be able to honor just what he's saying, right? All right, so we are going to start with our guided instruction. And before I start with our new content, I'm going to really recap really quickly what we learned last session, last week. And if you recall, I did leave you with the responsibility around power. And so looking at power and the defined word, power, right? What does it mean? Looking at power as the ability to do something or act in a particular way especially as a faculty or quality, the capacity to direct or influence the behavior of others or courses of events. I asked the question on the responsibility piece around power, who should have power, right? And I said to begin to process and think about that, talk to others about it. Who should have power was one of those questions. For whose benefit should this power be had? And at whose expense should this power be had? So that's really what we were talking about around power. We learned about how our US governmental system and structure came to be with 3 branches of government, the executive, judicial, and legislative branch. And we also talked about how constitutionally implied those separation of powers between those branches and how they distribute power, but also want to fiercely guard and protect the power that they have, and they do have embedded incentive to do that. If you did not see that particular session, you can definitely go back and watch that on our National Parents Union Facebook page. Under videos or posts, you will find that session. So now, as we go into our guided instruction around persuasion and using persuasion as an art, we're going to go over some brief history, right? And since we just recapped about power, I want to really talk about what do you know about the power to influence change? Okay, do you believe that one person is able to influence change? And if so, do they need to be in a special role with a title? Or can everyday people like ourselves use what we know to influence positive change now while we continue to develop our skills to influence change for the future? Okay, today we'll be learning about the art of ethical persuasion and how to use it. And so as you can see, I brought up a history on really how persuasion had been researched, studied, and applied. First, laying the foundation of the use of persuasion, we see Aristotle. And Aristotle, if you don't know who that is a towering figure in ancient Greek philosophy who made important contributions that are used today in logic, criticism, rhetoric, physics, biology, psychology, mathematics, metaphysics, ethics, and policies. His particular work around persuasion, which also you might hear as rhetoric, okay, is in his writing Rhetoric, which consists of 3 means of persuasion. So here we have those 3 means of persuasion really coined and worked on by Aristotle, and we can see logos, right? So logos we see has the logical argument for your point piece, right? So building off of logos, logical argument for your point, that's what that means. Ethos, right? And so you see the chart here, logic. Ethos is about establishing your authority to speak on a subject, on the subject. You see ethos right here. Speaks to credibility, right? We're going to be really going over a lot of information. So, you know, if you have to come back and rewatch it, that would be good as well. And then we see pathos, right? Pathos is your attempt to sway an audience emotionally. And so looking at how all of those 3 can be balanced are modes of persuasion, which are also indicated in his writing on Rhetoric. Definitely go and research that a little bit more if you want to know more information about how Aristotle came up with that. And, you know, I really want you to be able to understand what each area details and means. So have you ever noticed that one day you're able to get people to listen to you, and then at another moment you are not? I know that most of us as parents, we have that experience raising our children, but then we also have that experience with other adults. And so definitely being an effective listener, but also being able to get your point across is fundamental in everything that you do. More so, this applies to daily life than people think. And so we definitely want to learn the skills and develop those skills that we need to communicate our points effectively. think about what could be different in those instances, right? Those instances, meaning when you're able to get someone to listen to you, and then at another moment, you're not, okay? So just think about that while we're doing this, ponder that. Aristotle understood that in order to captivate your audience, your idea has to be made from the sense of their point of view, right? And so hence we have logos. In order to make what you're saying relevant to your audience, you must understand your audience. You must understand their view. Are you speaking to people with challenges and suffering that you might not have experienced, right? And so having the information, having the knowledge, having the ability to really communicate with that target audience or that listener, even if you don't have those shared experiences, is definitely gonna be something that you wanna develop and really refine and practice. How will you understand and reach them with your message, right? Logos would answer that. In order to make sense to your audience, you have to have sound logic and reason, which I just said, a good argument that your audience or the listener can relate to. So then we look at ethos. Ethos speaks more to your credibility and reputation. As you can see right here, as a mode, ethos, credibility and reputation. What do people know about you, right? Are you considered a trustworthy and credible source of information? Here is where a clear set of intentions, motives, and care have to be shown, right? Your listeners need to know that you are a trusted source who cares about hearing them as much as you care about getting your message across. It's not just a one-sided thing. We're working diplomatically and collaboratively with people. We want to make sure that we're effective listeners, but that also we are getting our points across. And so you have that relational capacity that you're building with that. Being an authority on a matter means you will give clear and concise messages with confidence in your delivery. So we can think about what Nelson Mandela was saying about courage, right? That's where that confidence comes in at. And so then we look at the other mode, which is pathos. Pathos, again, being the emotional side, okay? Your attempt to sway an audience emotionally. If you can relate and you have an emotional connection, this is where telling your story is an effective way to appeal to the emotions of your audience or listeners. Also understanding that your audience may not be ready to hear your direct message right away. That means that you have to create that right emotional environment for your message to be heard. Having a firm understanding and balance of all three of these will increase your ability to accomplish your task in an effective and ethical way. Take it away, Shay.
All right, so I'm back. I'm the game lady. So I am going to share my screen real quick. I'm going to hit in the chat. That is the pin. It will also be on the screen. Let's see. All right, we're gonna play. Oh, did I just go away? What just happened? Can you guys
I see you there, but it's really, really large.
Really large. Okay, hold on. Let me stop sharing. Sorry, y'all. I have a double monitor now, and I might have messed it up. All right.
Okay.
La la la. Try again.
And if you didn't download the app, you can definitely answer in the comment field or chat field.
Yes. So we've got Renee, Haley, and Maritza on so far. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to try and get in. I know there's more than 3 people here. Now, don't feel like you have to get the answer right. Kahoot is really just for fun. It's for yourself to kind of see, do I understand the content? And if not, we re-answer the content. So it helps you relearn it. Again, is there somebody in the chat? Nope. All right. I'm going to give it a couple more seconds.
Lori Lee is going to be answering in the chat. That's
totally
fine.
awesome. Yes. answer in the chat if you cannot get on Kahoot. All right, and the game pin should stay. It will stay in the chat, and it should also stay on the screen. Let me see. Somebody else chatted. Somebody else is in chat. Awesome. Good, Lori. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. What is logos? So that was that one part. So, and I kind of give you a hint right here. Is it red? Those things that kids get as gifts and you step on them all over the floor, logos? Or is it your logical argument for your point? Blue. There you go. I always confuse it with Legos, maybe because I have 4 boys. But that is that logical argument for your point. Good. All right, now this is a poll. What is pathos? And click on the one you think it is. Is it your attempt to sway your audience emotionally, or is it the path to follow your heart? And remember, this is about expressing yourself and communication. I didn't trick anybody with my blue answer. All right, good. That's your attempt to sway your audience emotionally. So you've got the logical part, the logos, the pathos, which is the emotional part, talking to them heart to heart. And then ethos, that was the last part she was talking about, is ethos establishing your authority to speak on the subject, or when your ego gets in your way of getting your point across, which could also happen. Which one is it? Establishing your authority. Now, remember, authority doesn't always mean it has to be degrees. Now, Christina kind of establishes herself with the degrees on her wall. I don't have any degrees on my wall, but I am an authority of my child. So I know my kid, you know, better than somebody else who's never met my child, correct? So you can still be an authority on a subject without a degree on that subject. It's more if you know about that, you have experience in that, and then you helping them to understand that you are an authority in that subject. And our last one, can the use of persuasion be ethical? Is it ethical? Is the use of persuasion ethical? Yes or no? Is that really ethical to use persuasion when we're trying to talk to somebody? Ooh, I tricked one of you. It is totally ethical. Now, persuasion does not have to be a lie. Persuasion can use that logos, pathos, and eos. I totally used, did I say it right? Those are all parts of persuasion. Persuading the head, persuading the heart, and persuading, you know, the whole being, right? That doesn't mean that you're lying by persuading. All right. And we will see how everybody did. So Kaylee, yay, third place. Good job. And Natasha, you're in second, and in first place we have, let's see who it is, Maritza. And again, this is just for fun. I'm glad you all joined in the fun and learned something. If you were just watching, that's totally okay, because it's a repeat of what we learned. So I am going to stop sharing and turn it back to Christina.
Thank you so much. It's always exciting watching people answer the questions on Kahoot. I'm so glad that we get to play that game while we're instructing about these topics. And so I'm going to start screen sharing again. Tracy said she wants a do-over. We'll definitely have another opportunity coming up soon. All right. So basically, we just had the question, is the use of persuasion ethical, right? And I think that really deeper, if we take a look at, the answer is yes, but we also have to think about the person that is using persuasion to get their point across. is that person's character one of trustworthiness, right? And so if a person is trying to persuade through manipulation or things that are not trustworthy, then that's a bad character trait, not really speaking to the use of persuasion, but speaking more so about that person's character. And so we definitely need to be paying attention to how people are responding and acting and using their authority. And, and as Shay said, there's people that may not have titles or degrees. We'll be talking about that. But like, you are a authority about your children. You know your children best. You know your children better than the medical doctors know them. You birth them. If you are a caregiver and you're an adoptive parent or foster parent, still you know the child, you're with them most of the time. And so you are an authority when it comes to speaking to that child, even about your grandchildren. And so I don't want you to think that you have to have some special expert like degree or title. You are the expert when it comes to your child or your grandchild. All right, so building off of the framework that Aristotle set for persuasion, that ethos, that logos, what we just went through, pathos, right? We're going to look at 6 principles of ethical persuasion. Remember, ethical persuasion, to get your point across and influence decision-making processes. And so you can see here, Robert Cialdini's 6 principles of ethical persuasion. I will be using his model. Really, if you want to know more, you can definitely get his book on power and influence so that you can understand in depth how he applies it, even as a business model and things like that. But tonight, we're just going to be going over these 6 principles and why we are going to use them. So reality is that people do not always have the most accurate information. We know that. When we're talking to people, we recognize that, oh, well, I think your information's kind of off, especially when you're dealing with decision makers, because decision makers that may be making decisions for our children sometimes have outdated information, and you have to supply them with the most up-to-date, accurate data and evidence while, speaking to them. Maybe they have children that are in college and they don't quite understand the woes of parenting through this generation and what's happening in our educational landscape, right? So that's just the reality. In a fast-paced society of convenience and technology, we find ourselves needing quick guides, easy access to rules and other ways to consider things when we make decisions. However true this may be, it doesn't help us to make informed decisions, and it heavily impacts our lives when decisions are made on our own behalf without the full scope of information being understood. And I see someone raising their hand. If you have a question during this time, you can definitely put it in the chat. Either I will answer at the end, or my delegates here that are with us will be answering while you're entering those into the chat. Thank you. And so we're going to go on to start talking about these 6 principles. So we're going to talk about the principle of reciprocity, right? Reciprocity, you see the definition there. It is the practice of exchanging things with others for mutual benefits, especially privileges granted by one country or organization to another. So how can we apply reciprocity, right? The idea that I did something for you and you should do something back, that mutual understanding and relationship or exchange of actions, goods, energies, time, emotion, etc., between two people. Okay, so if you are meeting with someone, you have a listener, and you're trying to get your point across, what you could do is be the first person to make sure you give a personalized and unexpected statement or compliment. What is going to make them want to listen to you over maybe the 200 people that maybe contacted them that day, right? Especially when we're talking about elected officials that directly represent you. It's really a good thing to remind your elected officials that you're asking for them to consider what you're saying in their decision-making process, which you should be because you voted for them. It's a good thing to remind them of that, but also, you know, maybe there's something that you can do that's personal and unique to make them remember you, right? So if you're their constituent, like I said, in their district, they will take your call before others. That's personal and unique. You don't know how many organizations or businesses or other people that may be reaching out to them that's not really their constituent. And so you, as their constituent, will have priority. So you definitely want to make sure that you understand that exchange of actions, and their role as an elected official is to do what is in the best interest of you, the citizenry, and you are their constituent. So you definitely want to remind them of that, and remind them of your vote while you're discussing your needs. All right, take it away, ladies. So you guys, so we're going to be, the delegates are going to be sharing particular examples of how to use reciprocity, and I'm going to let them go ahead and speak.
So I'll start. You know, I am currently an elected official, and it is important, and I'm going to just say this really honestly, that you don't send form letters. When you are contacting your elected official, you know, you are their constituent, go back to the ethos, the logos, you know, and speak from your heart. What is the issue? Bring it forward, you know, but also try to understand what their values are, you know, so you can meet them too and understand how they vote on things, because sometimes it's very important to meet people halfway, you know, but never let go of your values. You know, even when you're working with other organizations, what are your values that you will never let go? And I don't know, I know we talked, Maritza, with a congressman in your district, and I mean, he was really value aligned. You
Absolutely.
know, you knew where he stood. So I think that's one point that I want to make. Just make sure to understand who they are. You know, you are going to have an issue, but understand who they are too, as human beings, and what their values are.
Yes, please don't be afraid of getting to know your elected officials. You know, if you know they're going to be at a particular public event, introduce yourselves to them. Let them know who you are. Let them know you're one of their constituents. You know, what ward or district you live in, especially if they represent your ward or district, and ask them, you know, be mindful to see whether or not this particular elected official has walked through your neighborhood, has gone to your local schools, has gone to speak on things that you really care about, that you really want to see improvement made or changes made in your community. Don't just be a hanger on out of some kind of loyalty for a person that's been in that position for years. Make sure they're doing their job.
I wanted to circle back to the word constituent. Sometimes, like, wait, what does that mean? So constituent is the person who serves you, right? So there's a senator who represents me in a geographic district, right? There's maps for the geographic districts for senates, house members, you know, city, all that kind of thing, school district. And so you're a constituent if they serve you, not you serve them, right? So they serve you, you're their constituent. It's kind of backwards. It sounds like you serve them because you're their constituent, but you're their constituent, right? You're kind of almost over them, like they're there to serve you. I also wanted to talk about that reciprocity part. Is not just with our elected officials, it's also with other organizations. So when you're trying to move forward or move something forward, whether it's a bill, an activity, you know, an event, a movement, and you need other organizations to work with you, right? What I have found is make sure you know those other organizations, know their events, know their values, and the things that align with your values, like Judith was saying. It's like, okay, well, awesome. Hey, can you tell your people about my rally, my event? And I will let my people know about your rally because they're going to be interested because our values align. So that's that reciprocal relationship. I'm going to do something for them and they're going to do something for me, right? It's the same thing with our elected officials. When my elected official does something for me, right, I want them to pass a bill. I want them to be for a bill. I want them to come and check out this new school or the neighborhood. I'm going to get on Twitter and I'm going to call them out for the good thing they did. That is reciprocal. I said, hey, can you come to the neighborhood, check out this issue? They came and I tweeted publicly and said, yay. So again, reciprocal. They came, did what I said, asked them to do, and then I gave them something in return. That's that reciprocity. Reciprocal relationship. That's what I'm going to use, reciprocal. Reciprocity. Sorry, y'all. I know this is the art of public speaking, but sometimes you get tongue-tied and you just be honest about it, right? Because we're all just people. So I want to make sure that you're realizing too, it's organizations, other people you're working with, because those elected officials like Judith are just mamas and daddies and grandmas and grandpas, or, aunties and uncles. So these are just people, and what is the part you give them, and what are they giving, right? And what are they giving you?
Yeah.
And so, as you notice, reciprocity doesn't cost money, right? It is a mutual exchange, and there's a beneficial relationship to that mutual exchange. And so I wanted you to make sure you understand that it's not like a favor that you're asking or handing over money or anything like that. You're just looking as a community in a collective, area that you guys are sharing the responsibility, and how is that a mutual benefit? And so reciprocity, definitely, use that in your speaking and ability to persuade. All right, so let's go back to the slides. And we just had the reciprocity discussion. So now we are going to be talking about the second principle, which is the principle of scarcity, right? And I put some funny little pictures up that everybody could relate to. As you can see right here, on the right, it says $400 an ounce. That's a ripoff. And here's the person behind the counter. Do you know how hard it is to get unicorn tears? And now you see the unicorn in the background cutting onions, right? And so here we see the coffee, and people that are avid coffee drinkers understand that it is very hard to say, you know what, I shouldn't be drinking so much coffee. And maybe if you miss a cup of coffee, then, it's a bad day. So here you see a bad cup of coffee is better than no coffee at all. So I try to make it a little bit comedic, but then just giving the understanding of scarcity. So scarcity, as we can see, is defined as the state of being scarce or in short supply, shortage, especially of food, money, or some other resource, insufficient for demand, occurring in small numbers or quantities. It could be something that's rare, right? But looking at scarcity in human nature, scarcity in human nature is shown in the fact that people will want more of the things they can have less of. You can see that when you say, I'm going to break my sweet tooth, I don't want to eat so much sugar. Suddenly, you want more of what you can actually have less of. So how can we apply the principle of scarcity in our efforts to persuade in discussions, right? So one way you want to really focus on the benefit that the listener and the audience will gain by hearing you out. Focus on the benefits, right? And again, we're talking about you coming from your unique poise and position of what you're requesting, right? What makes you stand out and what makes you different than everybody else that may be talking to that person, right? You want to make your time that you get for the audience, for the listener rememberable. So uniqueness is a plus. It's not a negative. You being different is definitely a plus here. Okay. And then, you have to also remind the listener what they can stand to lose if they fail to consider your proposal. What can they stand to lose? Well, if you're a constituent and you're asking an elected official to consider what you're saying in a decision-making processes, they can stand to lose your vote and the people that also are like-minded, right? And you can say that, like, there are other people who are like-minded. And you know what? We are definitely going to, as a collective, not vote for you next time. And so that is something that an elected official or representative can stand to lose. Make sure that you indicate that. So let's talk about that again. Focus on the benefit that they'll gain first. Bring in your unique perspective. What makes what you're saying something they should listen to? What makes what you're asking for different? And what they can stand to lose if they fail to consider your proposal. All right. Ladies, take it away.
This one's fascinating for our area here because there's a scarcity of leaders of color that speak on education. And so we hold a special power to be able to speak of the needs of our community. And it's back to the ethos that we were speaking of, that we have to ensure that our credibility and our reputation's intact so we're heard. So if you are in a community that you find yourself being the really, really minority as a parent leader, you hold that, but you have to make sure that your reputation and credibility, going back to your logos, that you know your audience, but you're coming with the research, right? So in that case, like for me, I'm knowledge holder of our communities. It's a scarcity, so I hold really tight to my reputation. So when I do speak for families, I'm heard and I'm respected in that case. That's what I bring the knowledge in our area. So I don't know, Maritza, do you see something?
One thing that I have noticed and I admire about all of us is that we make sure that we do our research. Yes, when we have these conversations with people, we do tell our story and it does come from the heart, but then we also are able to back it up with actual facts and points and things that really need to be focused in on, so that other people that are listening to us or are with us can also take the best part. If there is someone that's a little bit shy or they don't consider themselves a good person to speaking in public, the more they hear us and the more they hear the person that they trust, any of you or myself, if they trust me and they trust us, they say, well, I'm gonna take a little bit of what I heard her say or her style or her manner of speaking. I like that. And I can also tell my story and share with others, my experiences, good, bad, or indifferent. So it's very important to earn people's trust.
All right, so I'm having a little bit of an internet issue. Hopefully I'm still on. Good. I'm going to give a little bit of an example where I kind of use this scarcity. In an education hearing, I'm in Texas, and there was a bill that would have closed down a type of school that was 100% online. This is prior to COVID, so there are schools that have been around before that were online. And a lot of the students that utilize that kind of school were kids with physical, emotional ailments, right? And
I think we may have lost her. She'll be back.
She'll be back. No, and I think Emily had a really good comment in the comment area about how, compared to the special interest groups, how we can feel small, especially when we're parents that we weren't trained to be leaders. We're just here to advocate for our child. And yes, you can feel small. And the one thing that I'm learning, because I feel you, Emily, here in Arkansas, where I'm at, is we have to build power. We have to find people that have those common values with us and build our power so you have that support. That's the only way to do this. But I'm with you in heart, Emily, on that one.
All right, so as we wait for Shay to rejoin us, we're going to go to the next slide. And yes, this is about building power and influence, developing change makers. And so that's why we do this, and that's why we host these types of panel discussions. And I wish that power and influence was something that could be just gained overnight, but really looking at this as a marathon and not a sprint. And we as parents are committed, and as constituents committed to your community. And you want to build something that is lasting and generational, right? We don't want our kids to have this same fight. And so I know it's not really like the answer that we always want to hear, like, I want a result. I want this resolved right away, but building power doesn't really work that way. However, we're going to continue to do what we can today and develop our skills to have a better future for the next generation. Each generation should do better than the last. So keep that in mind when you are advocating and through your activism and work that you're doing for your children or in the community, or whatever role you may be, So let's go to the next slide. All right. So we are now on the principle of authority, right? And as you can see, authority implies that people follow the lead of credible, knowledgeable experts. Authority here is defined, and it says the power or right to give orders, make decisions, and enforce obedience. The right to act in a specified way, delegated from one person or organization to another, official permission or sanction, a person or organization having power or control in a particular way, typically political or administrative sphere, right? The power to influence others, especially because of one's commanding manner or one's recognized knowledge about something. The confidence resulting from personal expertise. Again, we talk about not having to be having a particular title or position to be confident in your expertise about your child, about your community, about what it is that you are relaying to the listener, to whoever you're speaking to. And as you can see, and I'm going to read the last part of the definition before I go to the picture, a person with extensive or specialized knowledge about a subject, an expert. So we see right here some synonyms in the thesaurus, right? And you see this bird right here saying, what are other words for authority figure? Well, words are boss, leader, mentor, parent, role model, guide, example, influence, person of influence. You are the person of influence for your children. You are the parent, you are the leader, you are the model, you are the guide, you are all of those things about and for your children and your family, okay? And so if we look at the use of authority in your discussions, it is important for you to signal that you are credible and knowledgeable in the authority before you make your influence attempt, before you try to have a discussion, right? Establish that you are a credible and knowledgeable, trustworthy source about what you are going to be discussing. So if it's about your child, establish that you are the credible and knowledgeable source of information about your child, right? People tend to automatically respect certain things. Like if we see a person in a uniform, we're automatically going to expect for that person to be an expert in whatever field they may be in, because we might not have information about that field. If I see a military officer dressed up in a uniform, I'm going to assume that that person is pretty knowledgeable and credible when it comes to knowing information about the military. I don't know it, so I'm going to trust that person when it comes to detailing that information about the military, right? If you, people can recognize, like Shay said in the beginning, I have certificates on my wall. Everyone doesn't have their degrees or whatever displayed on their wall. Not a problem. It doesn't matter. I am still talking from my level of expertise. And when I'm talking in particular about my children, I am the authority figure with credible and knowledgeable information to be able to talk and influence the discussion around what is best. If I, which I did, worked in the public education sector, then I have information from that time, that experience, that I can bring into that discussion. You know, and so whatever it is that you have in your tool belt or your toolkit, you can utilize as that credible, knowledgeable source of information. Having data also to back your claim is important here. So having data, we talked about that, being able to use reason and logic, having data, having information, showing the information also shows that you are a credible, reliable source. We cannot expect that when it comes to certain things, especially education, that the elected representatives and officials automatically know and have this information. You become that credible source of information and change. We can't expect that they automatically know. Having or knowing a person in common, right? So how many people do you know that may also be talking to that particular person that you're trying to get your point across to? Having or knowing a person in common, or someone to speak to your credibility or your skill set and proven track record in your community or with regards to education, is another way to indicate you are an authority in the matter, right? Sometimes people don't want to come off as arrogant or boastful and prideful, and I wouldn't suggest that you do. So oftentimes having someone else speak on your behalf will be a good thing to show that you have a proven track record, you know what you're talking about, and that the listener or audience should listen to you. All right.
This one's my favorite one. Authority. You know, I have an organization and I work with parents. And the one thing, when we are speaking about our children, it's always emotional. The logic goes out. You know, we are there to defend our children. We know what's right. But the moment our children walk into schools, and it doesn't matter what school, schools feel they have the authority over our kids and they know best for our children sometimes. And, you know, it's like getting that authority back to ourselves. And a lot of times that authority, sitting in confidence. And I thank Christina Laster a lot for these conversations, because when I say something, Christina's noticing how I'm speaking and she gives me great feedback. So bring someone with you so you can grow in your ability to articulate. I'm not going to say calm down. You need to be full force, mama bear, daddy bear, you know, that come as you are. But when we are trying to get something for our kiddo, we need to get that feedback on how we can grow to be able to have that authority with confidence. They don't want to smell any sense of insecurity. You have to go confident in there. The other thing that's important, okay, have a network of education experts. I don't mean people with PhDs. I don't mean people with college degrees. No. Mama bear with a kiddo that's autistic knows her autistic loss, knows how autistic kids need to be treated. Grow your networks. And I'll give you an example. I had a mama with a kiddo with Down syndrome. She was not allowed to go to school when this pandemic happened, the first week of school. She came and told me, And I was like, let's use our networks. They weren't listening to us. Cool. We went to a school board member, and that same day, that little girl was able to attend school. Okay. Make sure you grow your networks, because sometimes, it's the sad truth. Us parents are not listened to, and that's why we're doing this work, and that's why we have the heart for this work. So make sure you grow your network, so that way you grow your authority with your network. You have that power. So that's my advice.
I absolutely agree with you, Judith. Grow the network. I absolutely agree with the fact that in growing that network, maintain those relationships, because you never know who you're going to meet down the line. It truly amazes me how my journey started years ago, but very recently I just consider myself just a parent that's very outspoken, that needs to know. So I made it my business to put a face to a name when it came to my children's teachers, to their school leader, to the counselor, to whomever. And through making myself known, and it's not necessarily making a lot of noise, or you'd be surprised at how people remember you for just being that person that's always there, that's always able to be there, because not all parents are able, due to other responsibilities, are able to be at every meeting the way they'd like to be. But then they see you as that person. Hey, Miss Gertie's always there, so let her know what my concern is so she can share it. And things like that help you build your network, and then maintaining those relationships, because years down the line, you'd be surprised. You may be the person that is in need of help. Then someone will remember you. I remember that mom. I remember that dad. I remember that grandparent that used to be at all these meetings. Now they need our help. Let's help support them. Maintaining those relationships when you build these networks is also very essential. And just as Christina said earlier, it doesn't have to be a person that has a doctorate or a master's or a bachelor's or even a high school diploma. As long as you are that parent that understands their child or the children in their care, they are the best authority on how the children understand things, how they will succeed and thrive, and they have to be listened to and respected by all means.
And so I see a comment in the chat that is talking about continuing to engage, right? We must continue to be present, and we must continue to engage. And I like to have this discussion around developing your engagement too, right? And I say, and the delegates will laugh probably when I say this, that either I'm going to teach you to be that person that they think about when they wake up in the morning, or I'm going to teach you to be that person that's a thorn in their side, right? That continued engagement, because you are going to hear from me. And yes, sometimes, other parents and family members or caretakers in the community don't have the ability to show up. And so when you develop your confidence, you become their representative authority on that subject matter. And I have used this concept with elected officials speaking on behalf of those parents that may not be there. So when I walk in the meeting and I say I represent the Black children in my community, and I don't need a whole bunch of parents with me, I mean that. And I have my data, and I have everything else that I'm talking about, because I am there to represent the Black children in my community, their education. I have the data, and I present that. And so you go in there with confidence, you can do that. And in the beginning, if you remember, I said, can one person be that change maker? Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is something that you do need to practice to master. We're all continuing to develop, but you know what? Don't give up, and continue to be brave and audacious to say, yes, I do represent 8 million Black children across this nation. And I mean what I say, and I say what I mean, and I will continue to engage with you. And so you being the representative authority over the population, the demographic, and the community that you represent is definitely something that you can grow and develop as we go along in these processes. All right, let's go to the next one. So now we're going to be talking about the principle of consistency. And so consistency we see, and I like to bring in the definition before we start If you notice, that's something that I do, so you can have all of the information that you need. So consistency is defined as acting or done in the same way over time, especially so as to be fair or accurate, unchanging in nature, standard or effect over time, compatible or in agreement with something, of an argument or set of ideas, not containing any logical contradictions, right? And so we see this little meme or image over here, and they're on an island and he has a shell on his ear. And it says, I know it's a hard habit to break, but it's useless to check your messages, right? And so I asked these questions in yellow. Are you a person who is consistently working to be part of positive change in your community? Or are you consistent, but just a creature of habit, right? Sometimes we just create these habits where, you know what, I'm just going to be in my little box, in my little bubble, and that's consistency too. So we can look at that as being something that is part of consistent change, or part of being a creature of habit. It's hard to break out of the habit and the mode of things that we know to be familiar. And so let's talk about ways that you can be consistent in creating positive change. So assuming that people like to be consistent with the things that they say and do, hence the creature of habit, how can you apply consistency in your efforts to create change? So when you're meeting with someone, you definitely want to ask for a commitment from that person, and ask for something that is within their power to make or decide, right? That's going to differ from your audience to your listener to whoever you're talking to that you're trying to impact and make changes. But you definitely want to ask for a commitment with the understanding that small commitments along the way can raise the potential to have agreements and larger commitments in the future. So that is building that relational capacity, understanding their history and their pattern of decision making is good, you know, so that you can ask for small commitments that you know will be mutually beneficial and that will work. And then you build that relationship so that when you are asking for a larger commitment in the future, your potential and your likelihood of gaining that commitment is gonna be great, right? Get that small initial commitment to increase the larger commitment on the more consistent change thing that you are seeking. Also, when you're asking for a commitment, make sure that you ask for a voluntary, active, and public commitment in writing from that person, right? I understand that sometimes people are not going to want to sit and draft some things out. And so having your materials and your requests written up in writing are a good way. If it's a letter saying, you know, we're asking for a particular thing, it will be good to offer that at that time to get that small commitment. Make sure that it's a voluntary and public commitment from that person. Okay.
So I think with consistency, for me, you need to have a support system. I just, in all honesty, this work is difficult. This work is hard. And if you don't have that support system, it's hard to be consistent, because you're going to constantly be stopping to catch your breath, catch, you know, like just protecting your space and energy. So that's the number one thing that I will tell you guys. Get a support system locally, start building that so you can have that support system. And if you have to go take a break, someone else is still there to pick up the ball and continue with that consistency. Because if you are not consistent, they're trying to hide things from us. Christina dearly has been helping me look at budgets here in Arkansas, school budgets. And, you know, there's things that, like, if she wouldn't have shown me, I wouldn't have known, you know, but I don't have the capacity right now to constantly be looking and searching at this stuff. So I need to build my capacity in the area to be consistent, so they know every time we show up, oh, we're looking at these numbers, right? That's the part of holding people accountable with that consistency. it's important to have that support system.
I agree with what Judith is saying, but also to add to that, in building, in order to be able to maintain the consistency through what you're trying to, what change you're trying to affect, also ask of anyone that's with you, to be honest with how much time they can commit. That way, you won't be disappointed if for some reason a particular person is not available. If they let you know up front realistically, this is how much time I can give you. This is how much time I can dedicate to this cause, to this task. That's going to continuously need people to be there to build support. Just, build that relationship, have that one-on-one conversation with that person. Every person you meet, I honestly feel you should have a one-on-one conversation to gauge their passion, to gauge their interest, and gauge their commitment of time. How much time can they honestly freely give to make sure that you can establish a good network of people that says, okay, I know that these particular folks can only help me on the weekends, or I know that this group of moms or dads, they can only help after 5 o'clock in the afternoon. If I need all of us to go down to a district meeting, I know who can come and who cannot. I know these parents are really good on the phone. They'd rather just be phone bank folks. Anything like that, develop and write down and ask a person, what do you feel passionate about, and how much time can you commit to this cause to help you remain consistent in whatever it is you're trying to do.
All right, so being that consistent force and asking for that commitment, definitely if you are able to get an appointment, get a future appointment at that moment, like, can we book that appointment right now? Don't leave without setting that on the calendar. So getting even that commitment allows you to continue to develop the communication with whoever your listener or elected official may be. And so definitely ask for that in writing. If you can't get anything else in writing, get that next calendar date before you leave that meeting. Let's go to the next one. All right, so here we have, and Bart's going to help us, the principle of liking, right? Really thinking about the fact that it is human nature to be liked, okay? And there are people that will say, oh, I don't care if anybody likes me or not, but we're not isolated on an island by ourselves. So I think that is the least likeliest to be true, even though we might sometimes wish we could not be liked and not care about it, right? That's not really how human nature is. And so there are 3 factors that we can consider, and liking is just a regard of fondness for someone. So 3 factors that can be considered when thinking about what causes a person in human nature, what causes us to like another person. And here we can see there are 3 things. We like people who are similar to us, right? And all of this has been researched and scientifically proven. Again, I told you at the beginning who created the 6 principles out of the rhetoric theory that Aristotle wrote, and you can definitely check the book out if you want to know more information. I'm just going over the principles, and if you want to go dive in deeper, definitely check that out. But we like people who are similar to us. We know that, right? We like people who pay us compliments. I mean, who does not like a compliment? It is rewarding. It's about the valuing of someone, to understand someone else's worth. And I think that can be a reciprocal mutual exchange, right? If you see someone that's doing well, don't feel bad about complimenting them. And then we like people who cooperate with us. Well, who doesn't, right? That's human nature. And so as you can see, Bart's helping us here. This is how I feel when someone likes me. And that is human nature again. So how do we use these three things to our advantage when having a discussion or acting under diplomacy, are using it when we're trying to get our listeners to hear us. So what you want to do is find out mutual goals, right? Like, we have something in common. It's not going to be very hard if you can discover a mutual goal, right? You can say, who doesn't care about children, right? We all care about children. And I hope that that's true for everyone, but we see that there are some people in the world that may not. And I'm not going to talk about that today. All right, and so offer genuine compliments. Like I said, it's okay to compliment people that are doing well. If you see that you're talking to an elected official and maybe they did something very good in your area, compliment them on that. Say, you know what, I understand that this is what you did and that was a very good thing, because this is the benefit that we gained in our community from your action, and I appreciate that. Compliment that, right? There used to be a concept around rushing into discussion. Time is money. I'm sure you've heard it. Getting right down to business. But that concept, time is money, and then rushing in with your message without building some type of mutual goal or capacity or relational capacity is really only beneficial and works only half the time. It only works half the time. So building a relational capacity is stronger and more influential because you will be able to identify the similarities that you share in common. If you identify a similarity prior to negotiating, it increases your odds for success and an agreeable outcomes by 90%. So we have the rushing in with the messaging, time is money, ideology and concept of I'm going to hurry up and get my point across without building any kind of relational capacity at all. That only works half the time. It's not going to be memorable. The person probably is going to be like, okay, yeah, they just wanted X, Y, Z, and now get them out of here. But when you build that mutual capacity, relational capacity around common and shared things and goals, that works 90% of the time. And you definitely want to do that. That's going to take some research who your audience, your listener, elected official is, what they have done, their history, their background, and knowing who you're talking to. And that works 90% of the time versus the time is money, get right down to business 55% or 50% model.
This one's a fun one, right? Because we all want everybody to like us. That's not possible. Not everybody's going to like us. And I think for me is what I've come down to it, because I think as an elected official, as a nonprofit executive director, I wanted everybody to like me. And this has been a hard lesson. Not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody, once you start speaking your truth, you're going to have people that are going to be your enemies, and you are going to have people that you're not necessarily be able to trust. And it's quite fascinating, this whole process. But when it comes to this, is you have to be very, very direct of what your values are, what you stand for, okay? And what you will not move away from. These are my values. I need to speak of the issues of kids of color. If that's an uncomfortable conversation for you, and don't want to have that conversation with me, okay. I mean, that's one value that I hold, and so when I'm having a conversation with someone, if they're not willing to have that conversation, how can you speak on the needs, and then it turns into they're not probably going to like you because you're going to make them feel uncomfortable. It's all about making people feel uncomfortable when they turn around and not like you. It's quite fascinating. So back to what we were speaking about earlier is try to figure out when you're having a conversation with someone, what are their values? So you might have to do research beforehand. It's an elected official, how do they vote? A lot of the issues here in Arkansas, and I'll speak about here, is the lack of understanding of our immigrant community and their needs, and then the inability to speak about those needs. But in the area that I work with, I need to speak on the needs of our community. So that sometimes, because they're uncomfortable with those conversations, ends up that they don't like me, right? But is that my fault? No. So you have to stay true to who you are, what you're standing for, your values, and keep going. At some point, you are going to have that authority. You're going to be the expert in that field. So here's Judith Thorne on our side, but wait a second, we have a question, and we know Judith is consistent in fighting for immigrant families. Let's reach out to Judith. So everything that we've spoken about, you have to be consistent. Do not sway away from your reputation. This is why it is important for you to be guided with everything with your value system, because that's what builds your reputation. They know what you stand for. And when you become that expert in that field, they will look for you. So stand true to who you are in your power. And if that's something that the National Parent Union has taught me, is come with your power. What is your power? Stand strong in that and your confidence. Okay?
Always speak your truth. Do not sway from your truth, and don't be afraid to have to defend it. Do your research when it comes to people that you're going to be approaching, because you would be surprised. As I said earlier, don't be afraid to approach someone that is in a particular seat, because they may be just like you. They may not have shared it at that point in time. That's why, if you're able to have that conversation, it's very important to try to find, even if it's one minor thing that you both have that's similar, you can hone in on that, and that'll always be how they remember you. Oh yeah, that's that. She has her sons also play basketball like my sons play basketball, or her daughter and my daughter attended the same, dance recital. They were part of it. This is the mom that makes that amazing food whenever we go to the parent gatherings. Anything that you can grasp that is common, that for someone that may be like-minded like you. If you always hear that parent that is standing up for the rights of all, align yourself with that parent if you also that same kind of parent. If there is a special needs parent that's out there that, and you also a special needs parent, and you're like, you know what, I want to get to know this person, and then the both of you together will be a powerful force to contend with when we have others out there that are trying to oppose whatever you're trying to get for not only your children, but the children of others as well. So find that point, and not everyone's going to like you. They may not like me because of the way I speak, but that's okay, because I'm still going to get my point across. They may not like me because of the way I wear my hair, or the clothes that I wear, or the color of my skin. You may not like me, but if what I'm saying to you hits the core of what you want to also fight for, we have a common goal in mind. Even if it's just that little point, we will be like-minded for that moment in time, and we can work with that. I can work with you. We can work with each other. Just find that common point, that thread. It's just a little thread. That's all that's needed.
And I want to add something to Maritza. Thank you for your passion, because you empowered me to say something else. Speak your truth. That's how you find your tribe. Seriously. Like, when you speak your truth, you're going to attract those people that are like you, and that's how you build your power and your authority. So always speak your truth with power.
And so that I see about being a Marine wife and having an elected official who was a Marine, got their attention. Yes. So a part of the 3 factors of likability or liking is people having something similar to us. All right, let's go into the next one. So we're at the principle of consensus. And looking at consensus building, I did put a statement up here that came from a larger research on consensus building. Maritza is going to add that link in the chat for those of you that want to look out up John Spacey's article on the 7 examples of consensus building. I'm not going to be able to discuss that during this time because we're talking about the art of persuasive speaking. And so consensus building is the social process of obtaining general or widespread agreement for a principle, goal, strategy, plan, rule, decision, or design. This may be intended to improve the quality of outputs by incorporating the diverse perspectives of a group. More commonly, consensus building is aimed at building support for a strategy by making people feel like they have been adequately consulted. And as you can see, this quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. says, "A genuine leader is not a searcher for consensus, but a molder of consensus." All right, so looking at consensus as defined as a general agreement, you can think about the idea of birds of a feather flocking together, right? People are most likely to look at the actions of others to determine their own actions. So when you're talking to someone and you want to make sure you leave an impact or influence on them, what their decision-making process is going to be. I'm talking about developing change makers here, right? Incentivize them by drawing attention to, incentivizing by drawing attention to benefits they'll gain makes a smaller impact than using known data and proven efficacy models to state your case and find common ground. I know it seems like, you know, if you tell them all of these huge benefits they gain, that they will automatically have consensus with you. That is not necessarily the fact. It's smaller than using data and proven efficacy models to state your case and find common ground. So that's where that research and that logic is going to come in, that ability to reason and use reason and rationale and data research to prove your case and your argument. Messaging is very important. So you definitely want to use messaging and offer a measurement tool at this point, right? You don't really want to point out your own, rather than pointing on our own ability to persuade others, we can point out what others are already doing. I.e., for example, list how many other parents feel the same way or how many of their colleagues have already agreed. So if I come in and I just talk about my problem, right? Do I really have that network and that consensus and that credible, knowledgeable information if I'm just talking about my problem? It really will be a smaller impact. But if you use the data to say 68% of the nation's parents agree with what I am saying. And here is the stats to show you that. So you're not just coming from a place of just talking about your own, ability to persuade, but you're talking about a collective set of information and using that information in your messaging as your measurement tool. It's no longer just you, it's you and a whole bunch of other people. And here's the data and the research to show that. So you definitely want to use that to your advantage. Also, when you're talking about colleagues that may have agreed, does the person, if you're talking to an elected official, I use that as an example, does that person also work in that sector of government with someone that have agreed with what you're saying? Can you point to the bill and say, well, Senator so-and-so obviously agrees with the 68% of us parents, and here's what they created to show that they're in agreement. That also applies pressure. Or if you've had a discussion with someone else, maybe in the Senate committee, and you say, I talked to this person, and guess what? They're committed to making sure that all children have a high quality education. And I believe that it would behoove you to have that in your best interest as well. So that is how you really want to mold and shape consensus, and just use that as a principle. Let me see. And we are going to bring up an example of the data. So as you can see, here is our website. Maritza or Judith, can you let me know if you guys can see this? I can't hear you, honey. Okay.
Yes, we can see it. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's okay. So right here, when I'm talking about using data, we have polling information. We shared it in the chat. Let's look at that for a second, right? So new poll, what parents really think about their children's education? Hint, it's not great, right? And so here is data around parents' top concerns. Definitely check this out. Definitely use this in your discussions. Use this data. 68%, again, that's what I had said in the beginning, are worried a lot or some about making sure their children stay on track in school, the highest percentage since the polling began in April. So you can see that this polling has been taking place over a period of time. And here is the data. This is national data, definitely, that you can share. We also have data on learning loss, right? You can use this data. We have data about hybrids challenges, okay? Rethinking education. 66% of parents say schools should be focused on rethinking how to educate students, coming up with new ways to teach children moving forward as a result of COVID-19. Definitely utilize that data, right? Utilize this information. It's open for you all publicly to look at and view. Here you can click on this link and it will take you to the data that has been collated over months. It'll take you to more specific numbers. You can definitely look at that. We put that in the chat for you to view, but I wanted to give you an example of how to apply data and how to use an accurate source. It tells how many people were polled. And so you could definitely use that to show your credibility and knowledge in this area. Close this. Also, if you haven't visited this site while I'm here, there are other things that you could definitely look at and just go to each tab and do some, take some time to look at what it is that we're offering for your help in your conversations. All right. So now we will have our discussion on consensus.
So if you have not seen the data that Christina just showed us, please go in there. Mercury has done a wonderful job of collecting that data for us. And there is so much information that's rich for us to use in conversations. It is important to have that data, to have consensus. And I say this with all my heart because as parents, sometimes that logic, when we're emotional with our children, that logic goes out the window. So it's great for you to have that data to go, hey, look, this percentage. And I think one of the things, the beautiful things that I've learned from Christina, it's always an education. We don't want to sit in the negative that's happening, right? Like we're always doing this amazing, good thing. And one of the tricks Christina taught me, yeah, great, we're doing this for 37% of the kids, good job. But what about those other 60% that were failing? And so even using that data to get consensus, to have that conversation revolving around facts and logic, where it's undisputable, to get consensus for everyone involved and getting that focus to let's serve children and families better.
I like what you said. And for those of us, well, folks like me, that is not really a math person. This type of information helps me because I may know what's happening immediately in my school or in my neighborhood or in my city. But the fact that these polls were done across the country, you can really use this information in showing the true raw data with regards to how everyone is feeling at this point in time. So it's not just about yourself. It's not just about your neighborhood. It's not just about your city or your state. This data was taken from across the country and compiled, and it's very readable. It's very understandable when you're trying to prove your point to people that are going to say, well, where's your data? Here it is. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's been done already. We've been asking parents and educators from across the country to answer some questions. And all this time throughout this past year, we've put it all in one place for you to be able to review it and to share it with others if they also still don't really understand why it's so very important to have real information that is backed up with the data. It is not just us making impassioned speeches about our own personal story. This is in combination with that. You'll be better equipped. You'll have all the tools that you will need to prove your point, to let people know that are those decision makers that work for us, that we put in those places of power, that we also have the power based on what this information is giving us. If something's not working, here's the proof. If something is needed, here is the proof. And then it'll only be up to them onto what they're going to do to affect change, because we're going to have the proof in front of them that they can't dispute.
And I think that, it gives you the ability to bring in your own data, because like Judith pointed out earlier, sometimes we're going searching for the data and it's not in places that it's supposed to be publicly displayed, and you really got to dig through all kind of rabbit holes and trails and mazes like you're in the labyrinth to find data. So this gives you the ability to come from a poise and a position of, I am going to set the tone for this discussion, and I'm going to set what is the topic of discussion, which is this data right here. So you can definitely use it as a point of talking to enter into discussion about what's happening in the educational landscape. So we have a Kahoot coming up. If you can go to that, Shay is typing that into the chat or comment field. If you do not have Kahoot, again, please feel free to answer by putting your comment in the chat. So here is the pin, and we'll be waiting for players.
Can you guys see the Kahoot screen?
Yes, we
Great.
do.
So I'm going to keep my video off, as apparently my internet is going the crazy today. So we'll All right, who's going to play against Maritza? All right, Tracy and Kaylee, Natasha. Penelope. Oh, we had some players, some of our same players from last week. Oh, wait, now Wendy was not here last week. Let's see if she's going to beat everybody. We'll see. So again, this is based off of the second half of our boot camp class today and what we learned. I'm going to give it a few more minutes. And again, you can use the chat feature as well. Oh, Christina, that might cheat. Christina, you know all the answers.
I'm not gonna play because I don't want to cheat. We're definitely challenge friendly here, okay?
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. So reciprocity means, what is that reciprocity? What does it mean? I was not going to show pictures. The practice of exchanging things with others for mutual benefit. That's what it's supposed to say. A person or organization that receives or is awarded something. So reciprocity, remember, what does that mean? Is that exchanging things in red or being awarded something? Yes, that's like reciprocal, right? Reciprocity. Awesome. Uh-oh, Natasha. She's beating you, Maritza. All right, scarcity applies only to the state of being in a state of fear, fright, or panic, or the state of being scarce or in short supply or a shortage. So scarcity, is that a state of fear or a state of scarce or shortage, short supply. Oh, I got somebody. That is the, so scarcity is not really a fear. It can feel fearful sometimes, but that's that state of being in short supply of something. All right, true or false? You can be the authority if you're credible and knowledgeable about the subject matter. Is that true or is that false? You can be credible and you can be the authority if you're credible and knowledgeable about the subject matter. That is absolutely true. Oh, look, Natasha's got a little fire. She's hot stuff tonight. You are consistent when, red, you are adverse to change or innovation. Blue, your careful thought, typically over a period of time. Or yellow, you're acting or have done something in the same way over time. You're consistent when, which one? Yes, over and over and over again, you're consistent by doing the same thing in the same way over and over. My internet is not consistent apparently tonight. So there we go. All right, multi-select, click more than one, y'all. 3 factors can be considered when thinking about what causes a person to like another. We like people for their individuality. We like people who are similar to us. We like people who pay us compliments. We like people who cooperate with us. Which of those 3? The 4th one can be, but not what we were talking about earlier. So we do like people for their individuality as well, but if you notice, people who are maybe a little bit different, dress a little bit different than the crowd, someone else who dresses similar kind of hangs out with them, right? Think high school kind of, right? Those kind of, we are like magneted, like we automatically go to people who are similar to us. People who pay us compliments because we like to hang out with them because they make us feel good. And we like people who cooperate with us because we know that they're going to work with us and it's not going to be a struggle with them. Oh, we changed it up. True or false is the last one. Consensus means you have a group of people who share a general agreement. Is that true or is that false? Consensus. Is that a group of people who share a general agreement? True. So that's consensus. That means a general agreement. We are all agreeing upon the same thing. We have a consensus of thoughts or action. All right. Good job, everyone. Thanks for playing the game. So Natasha was in 3rd and Penelope Gross is in 2nd, and in 1st place we have Kelly. Very good with our runners up. Who are they? Let's see. Oh, I got to move it up. Can I see it? I can't see it. All right. Good job, everyone. Stop sharing.
All right, that's exciting. And we will be posting those winners as we did last week, this week again. So definitely look for that announcement from NPU. And let's go to we're wrapping up here. Let's see, I didn't screen share. Okay. All right. We did the Kahoot. So here we're at our power up moment. I always like to leave with a moment of reflection about power. how to build power, and then give a personal responsibility, something that you could challenge yourself with, and also use to challenge others, right? And so here we have a Yoda in the corner, power, right? Talked about that in the beginning, talked about that the last session. Practice till you master and don't give up, right? You want to know, here's what he says, Yoda. You want to know the difference between a master and a beginner. The master has failed more times than the beginner has ever tried. Think about that, right? Personal responsibility. Are you engaging in deliberate practice? Here's how you can know. Are you practicing your skill? Yes, that means you're engaging in deliberate practice. Mindless repetition. Remember, I talked about being a creature of habit, and sometimes it's in the little box, we just stay there and it's kind of difficult to get out. That means that you're not really practicing and engaging in deliberate practice, okay? Constantly striving for improvement. Yes. Watching an expert perform, right? Remember we talked about so-called experts and really not having accurate information and needing to have that information, and you are that expert to bring that information, that credible, knowledgeable information, accurate source of information. Monitoring your performance. That's self-evaluation, definitely. And like, I like to look at milestone moments, right? Where I started and where am I at now in the way that I am building power and capacity to influence change, right? And so 3, teaching other people. Well, we want to be more so monitoring our performance than like delegating responsibilities out for other people to take over them, even though that would be easier. And sometimes, you know, it's like comfortable, but we have to be fully engaged in deliberate practice as well. Evaluating your success. Again, looking up those milestone moments. A lot of times I capture those moments in pictures. And you would be surprised how even a photo album from January to December of things that you've done, meetings that you've been in, discussions that you've been a part of, even something like this, right? You can evaluate your successes, and that will help you to engage more and with deliberate practice. Working on the aspects you're not good at, right? We see that right here. In order to master something, you need to practice till you master it. You know, and you don't want to give up even when you're challenged, even if you fail, you continue to practice and you continue to build and develop your influence around these areas. So working on the aspects you're not good at. So definitely, I want to leave this with you as a takeaway, and we will have Maritza sharing announcements. Again, thank you guys for coming. Our time is going to be up shortly after announcements and Q&A, but if you have additional questions about NPU and this boot camp, as you can see, our information is here. I'm the Director of Policy and Legislation. Maritza is the Pennsylvania NE Region Delegate. Shay, Texas, Judith, Arkansas, but we're all part of National Parents Union here to help you. And so Maritza, go ahead.
Thank you so very much for everybody that attended. I added into the chat room the link if you are interested, if you or your organization is interested in being a member of the National Parents Union. The link is right there with the membership application. The third and final date of Christina's Advocacy Boot Camp will be Monday, January 4th. If you are interested in attending the last and final session, please make sure you register. Also, keep in mind that for those of you that are attending all 3, you will be getting a nice certificate at the end of the sessions on behalf of the National Parents Union. This is also part of a perk of being a member of the National Parents Union, that you'll be able to be a part of these important webinars and learning sessions that are wonderful for all of us. Also, please keep in mind that on January 7th at 8 p.m. Eastern, it will be the National Parents Union virtual town hall. We will have Dolores Huerta, Dr. Paul Bloomsberg, Christy Joyce Moreno, Nehemiah Frank, our wonderful Judith Yanes, Dr. Jose Manuel Villarreal, and Vivette Dukes. So if you're interested in being a part of that as well, please log into the National Parents Union website so you can register to be a part of that virtual town hall. Thank you so very much.
All right. Thank you. And so the next session, I just want to give you a little insight on what we'll be talking about, putting all of the things that we learned from session 1 and this session into action. Definitely looking at ways when the power of persuasion and diplomacy does not work, right? Then what, right? What do we have in our toolkit to utilize next when these things, you've tried everything and they failed? So how can we step up to the next level of advocacy? So definitely join us next week, same time for this information. And now we will enter into our question and answer session. Go ahead, Judith.
Do we have any questions?
So if we have any questions, you can enter them into the comment field. If not, we will be excusing you at this moment. Thank you so much for joining. Please share this information. See you next time. Bye-bye.